You think you're being polite, but the truth is, you're quietly destroying your reputation with every interaction. Right now, as you sit here watching this, someone at your workplace, in your social circle, or even in your own family is losing respect for you because of 7 habits you perform multiple times every day without even realizing it. These aren't obvious mistakes. They're disguised as good manners, as professionalism, as kindness. But behind your back, people are labeling you as weak, inexperienced, and someone who can't be taken seriously. The worst part? You have no idea it's happening. By the time you finish this video, you'll never see these behaviors the same way again. And you'll understand exactly why some people advance while others get stuck. Why some command respect effortlessly while others constantly feel overlooked. Before we dive in, do me a favor. If you want to completely transform how people perceive you and finally understand the invisible rules that separate respected individuals from forgotten ones, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Shadow Whisper. Because what you're about to learn isn't taught in schools, it isn't discussed at work, and most people will go their entire lives never figuring this out. Let me paint you a picture. There's a meeting happening at your company. 2 people are presenting ideas for the same project. The first person starts speaking, and within the first 30 seconds, they've apologized 3 times. Sorry for taking up your time. Sorry if this isn't clear. Sorry, I know everyone's busy. The second person walks in, sits down, makes eye contact, and begins presenting their idea with 0 apologies. They don't say sorry for existing in that space. They don't diminish their own contribution before anyone else has a chance to evaluate it. Now, both of these people might have equally brilliant ideas, but here's what happens in the minds of everyone in that room. The first person has already positioned themselves beneath everyone else. They've communicated that their time is less valuable, their ideas are probably flawed, and they're uncertain about their own worth. The second person has communicated confidence, clarity, and that they belong in that room. This is the apology reflex, and it's silently destroying your reputation every single day. The apology reflex is when you say sorry for things that don't require an apology. You say sorry for asking a question, sorry for needing clarification, sorry for having an opinion that differs from someone else's, sorry for taking up space, sorry for existing in a way that might inconvenience someone for even 3 seconds. You've been conditioned to believe this makes you polite, considerate, and likable. But here's the reality. When you apologize for things that don't warrant apologies, you train people to see you as someone who's unsure of themselves. You communicate that you believe you're in the way, that your presence is a burden, that your contributions are likely not valuable. Think about the people you respect most in your life. Do they constantly apologize for normal human interactions? No, they don't. They ask questions without prefacing them with apologies. They state their needs clearly. They take up space without shrinking themselves. This doesn't mean they're rude or inconsiderate. It means they understand that existing, speaking, and contributing don't require constant permission or apology. Here's what you need to understand. Every time you unnecessarily apologize, you're creating a subconscious pattern in other people's minds. They begin to associate you with uncertainty and insecurity. And once that pattern is established, it colors every interaction you have with them. When you present an idea, they're already skeptical. When you ask for a raise, they've already decided you probably don't deserve it. When you set a boundary, they assume it's negotiable. The apology reflex creates a reputation that precedes you into every room, every conversation, every opportunity. And the most frustrating part is that you think you're being nice. You genuinely believe this habit makes people like you more. But respect and likability are not the same thing. Someone can think you're nice while simultaneously having 0 respect for your abilities, your judgment, or your value. So how do you break this habit? You start by becoming aware of every time the word sorry leaves your mouth. For the next week, every single time you apologize, pause and ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong? Or am I apologizing for existing? If you bumped into someone, yes, apologize. If you made a genuine mistake that negatively impacted someone, absolutely apologize. But if you're about to say sorry for asking a valid question, sorry for sharing your perspective, or sorry for needing something reasonable, stop yourself. Replace that apology with a statement of fact or gratitude. Instead of, sorry for bothering you, try, do you have a moment to discuss this? Instead of, sorry if this is a bad idea, try, here's something I've been thinking about. Instead of, sorry I'm late, try, thank you for waiting. These small shifts change everything. They reposition you from someone who's constantly seeking permission to someone who has a right to take up space. Now let's talk about the second habit that's quietly destroying your reputation. You're sitting in a conversation where someone says something you completely disagree with. Maybe it's factually incorrect. Maybe it's something that goes against your values. Or maybe it's just something that makes you uncomfortable. But instead of speaking up, instead of expressing your actual thoughts, you smile, you nod, you give this pleasant, agreeable expression that says, yes, I'm totally on board with what you just said, even though internally you're screaming the opposite. This is the submission smile, and it's one of the most damaging habits you can have because it destroys your credibility in two directions simultaneously. First, it destroys your credibility with the person you're smiling and nodding at, because eventually the truth comes out. Eventually, they discover that you didn't actually agree, that you were just performing agreement to avoid conflict. And when that happens, they realize you're not trustworthy. They realize that your facial expressions, your nods, your entire demeanor can't be trusted as indicators of your real thoughts. Second, it destroys your credibility with anyone watching the interaction who knows you well enough to realize you don't actually agree. They see you smile and nod at something they know you oppose, and they mentally categorize you as someone without a backbone, someone who will say or do whatever keeps the peace in the moment, regardless of truth or principle. The submission smile comes from a deep fear of disapproval. You've learned that disagreeing with people, especially people in positions of power or authority, comes with social costs. So you've developed this automatic response where your face betrays your actual thoughts in favor of maintaining superficial harmony. But here's what you haven't considered. That superficial harmony comes at the cost of genuine respect. People don't respect those who constantly mirror back agreement. They respect people who have the courage to express authentic perspectives, even when those perspectives create temporary discomfort. Think about the last time someone in your life disagreed with you respectfully. Not aggressively, not rudely, but clearly and confidently. How did you actually feel about that person? If you're honest, you probably respected them more, not less. You probably thought, okay, this person has principles. This person thinks for themselves. This person isn't just telling me what I want to hear. That's the reputation you're forfeiting every time you deploy the submission smile. You're trading long-term respect for short-term comfort, and it's a terrible trade. Breaking the submission smile habit requires you to get comfortable with micro moments of tension. When someone says something you disagree with, you don't have to launch into a full debate. You can simply maintain a neutral expression instead of an agreeable one. You can say something like, "That's an interesting perspective. I see it a bit differently." You can ask a clarifying question that gently challenges the premise of what they just said. These small acts of authenticity build a reputation as someone with substance, someone whose agreement actually means something because it's not automatically given to everyone about everything. Which brings us directly into the third habit, and this one is particularly insidious because it masquerades as being thorough and transparent. You've probably done this within the last 24 hours. Someone asks you a simple question or makes a simple request, and instead of just answering or responding, you launch into an elaborate explanation of your reasoning, your constraints, your thought process, and every factor that influenced your decision. This is called the JADE trap, and it stands for justify, argue, defend, and explain. When you fall into this trap, you're unconsciously communicating that your decisions, your boundaries, and your choices require the approval of others to be valid. Here's a simple example. Someone asks if you can work late on Friday. You don't want to because you have plans. The JADE trap response sounds like this. Oh, well, you see, I would normally stay, and I totally understand we're behind on the project, but I actually have this thing I committed 2 weeks ago, and I already had to cancel it once before, and my friend is really counting on me, and I know it's not ideal timing, but I just don't think I can move it again, and I hope that's okay. Notice what's happening there. You're basically asking for permission to have your own life. You're providing so much justification that you're signaling your boundary is negotiable if someone just pushes back hard enough on your reasons. Compare that to this response. I'm not available Friday evening, but I can stay late Thursday if that helps us catch up. Notice the difference? You stated your boundary clearly and offered an alternative solution. You didn't grovel, you didn't over-explain, and you didn't invite someone to debate whether your Friday evening plans are valid enough to deserve respect. This is what people with strong reputations do. They understand that constantly justifying their decisions makes those decisions appear weak and uncertain. The JADE trap destroys your reputation because it trains people to interrogate your boundaries. If you provide 5 reasons why you can't do something, you've just given someone 5 different angles to attack. They can pick apart each reason, question its validity, compare it to other priorities, and essentially put you on trial for having needs or limitations. And because you've already established that your decision requires extensive justification, you've invited this interrogation. You've communicated that if your reasons aren't good enough, you'll change your answer. People with strong reputations understand something crucial. Decisions don't require elaborate justification to be valid. Sometimes the complete and total reason you can't do something is, I'm not available. Sometimes the entire explanation for a choice you made is, I decided this was the best path forward. You don't owe everyone access to your internal decision-making process. When you constantly over-explain, you're actually diminishing your authority and expertise. Think about doctors. When a doctor tells you to take a specific medication, they don't spend 20 minutes justifying why they chose that medication over every other option unless you specifically ask. They state their professional recommendation because their expertise gives that recommendation weight. You have expertise too. You're the expert on your own life, your own capacity, your own priorities. Start speaking from that authority instead of constantly defending it. This connects directly to the 4th habit, and I want you to pay close attention to this one because it's everywhere. You've just explained something. Maybe you taught someone how to do a task. Maybe you presented an idea in a meeting. Maybe you gave someone directions. And then, almost automatically, you add this phrase to the end. Does that make sense? Or maybe you say, is that clear? Or did you follow that? You think you're being helpful, checking for understanding, making sure the other person is on the same page. But what you're actually doing is undermining everything you just said. This is the "does that make sense" killer, and it's destroying your credibility as an expert and a communicator. Here's why this phrase is so damaging. It shifts responsibility for clarity from you to the listener, but it does so in a way that assumes you probably weren't clear. Think about the subtext of, "Does that make sense?" You're essentially saying, I'm not confident I explained this well, so I'm checking if my inadequate explanation somehow got through to you. You've just planted doubt about your own competence. Now you might be thinking, but wait, isn't it good to check for understanding? Absolutely, but there are ways to do it that don't undermine yourself. If you genuinely want to verify comprehension, you can say, what questions do you have? Or, how do you see yourself applying this? Or, walk me through your understanding of the next steps. These approaches put the responsibility for clarity where it belongs, on you as the communicator. But they do it from a position of confidence rather than insecurity. The "does that make sense" killer is particularly damaging in professional settings. If you're in any kind of leadership, teaching, or expertise-based role, this phrase trains people to question your knowledge. Imagine a lawyer who finishes explaining a legal strategy and then says, "Does that make sense?" versus one who says, "What questions can I answer about this approach?" The first one sounds uncertain about their own expertise. The second one sounds confident and open to dialogue. Every time you say, "Does that make sense?" you're creating a micro moment where people wonder if you actually know what you're talking about. You're inviting them to question not just their understanding, but your ability to communicate effectively. Breaking this habit requires you to get comfortable with silence after you speak. When you finish explaining something, stop talking. Resist the urge to fill the space with, "Does that make sense?" Trust that if someone doesn't understand, they'll ask. Trust that you communicated clearly. And if you want to check for understanding, do it in a way that assumes you were clear, and now you're just opening the floor for questions or deeper discussion. Now we're going to talk about the fifth habit, and this one is going to hit hard because it's directly connected to how overwhelmed, stressed, and burned out you feel on a regular basis. Someone asks you to take on a project. You're already drowning in work. You know adding this will push you past your limit. Every rational part of your brain is screaming, "No!" And yet, what comes out of your mouth? "Sure, I can do that." Someone invites you to an event you have zero interest in attending. You're exhausted. You need rest. You genuinely rather do anything else. But when they ask, you hear yourself saying, "Yes, I'll be there." This is the yes addiction, and it's not just destroying your reputation, it's destroying your life. The yes addiction operates on a simple but devastating principle. You believe that saying no will make people think less of you, so you say yes to everything, even when yes means sacrificing your own well-being, your own time, your own priorities. But here's the part you haven't fully grasped yet. Every time you say yes when you should say no, you're training people that your boundaries don't exist. You're teaching them that if they just ask, you'll do it, regardless of your capacity. And over time, this creates a reputation as someone who's available for everything, which paradoxically makes you valuable for nothing. Think about the people in your workplace who are genuinely respected and valued. Are they the ones who say yes to every single request? No. They're the people who are strategic about their commitments. They say yes to the things that align with their priorities and their capacity, and they say no to everything else. And because they're selective about their yeses, when they do commit to something, people know it will be done well. Compare that to the yes addict. They've committed to 17 different things. They're overwhelmed. They're producing mediocre work because they're stretched too thin. And people have learned that getting them to commit doesn't actually mean much because they've committed to everyone about everything. The yes addiction destroys your reputation in another crucial way. It makes you predictable and therefore easy to manipulate. People learn that you can't say no, so they don't even bother asking people who have strong boundaries. They come to you because you're the path of least resistance. You become the person who gets dumped on, not because you're the most capable, but because you're the least likely to push back. Is that really the reputation you want? Breaking the yes addiction requires you to understand something fundamental. Saying no to someone else is saying yes to yourself. Every time you decline a request that doesn't serve you, you're protecting your time, your energy, and your ability to show up fully for the commitments that actually matter. You can say no respectfully. You can say, "I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not able to take that on right now." You can say that doesn't align with my current priorities. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to provide elaborate explanations. You just have to be clear and firm. Let's talk about the sixth habit, and this one is subtle, but incredibly pervasive. Listen to how you write your emails and text messages. "I just wanted to follow up. I'm just checking in on this. I just have a quick question. I was just wondering if you had a moment." That word "just" appears in almost every sentence, and it's completely destroying your credibility. This is the just virus, and it infects your communication in a way that makes everything you say sound tentative, apologetic, and unimportant. The word just is a minimizer. It takes whatever follows it and makes it smaller, less significant, less worthy of attention. When you say, "I just wanted to check in," you're communicating this isn't really important. I'm just bothering you with something trivial. When you say, "I just have a quick question," you're preemptively apologizing for taking up space. But here's the thing. If your question isn't important enough to ask without apologizing, why are you asking it? And if it is important, why are you undermining it with just? The just virus makes you sound uncertain and insecure. It makes your requests sound like impositions rather than legitimate needs. It makes your ideas sound like tentative suggestions rather than valuable contributions. Imagine receiving these two emails. First email, "I just wanted to touch base about the project timeline. Just wondering if we could just move the deadline back a bit." Second email, "I'd like to discuss the project timeline. Can we schedule the deadline for next Friday instead of this Friday?" Which person sounds like they know what they need and expects to be taken seriously? The second one, obviously. The first one sounds like they're not even sure they deserve to make the request. Start paying attention to how often you use just in your communication. You'll be shocked. It's probably in half your sentences. Begin removing it systematically. When you catch yourself about to say or write just, delete it and see if the sentence still works. 99% of the time, the sentence is actually stronger without it. "I wanted to follow up" is more direct and confident than "I just wanted to follow up." "I have a question" is clearer than "I just have a quick question." These small changes accumulate into a communication style that sounds assured, professional, and worthy of respect. Finally, let's talk about the seventh habit, and this one might be the most socially accepted form of self-destruction that exists. You're in a conversation and someone gives you a compliment. "Nice presentation today." Instead of simply saying, "Thank you," you immediately tear yourself down. "Oh, I completely fumbled the introduction." Or someone says, "You look nice today," and you respond with, "What, this old thing? I look terrible. I didn't even have time to shower properly." This is the self-roast ritual, and while you think it makes you humble and relatable, it's actually training people to devalue you. The self-roast ritual operates on a mistaken belief that confidence is arrogance, and that the only way to be likable is to constantly point out your own flaws. You think that if you tear yourself down first, it prevents other people from doing it. You think it makes you seem humble, self-aware, and down to earth. But here's what's actually happening. When someone compliments you and you immediately contradict them, you're telling them their judgment is wrong. You're saying your perception of me is incorrect, and my negative perception of myself is the accurate one. You're literally teaching people to think less of you than they naturally would. Every time you self-roast, you're creating associations in people's minds between you and inadequacy. When you constantly point out your mistakes, your flaws, your failures, you're ensuring that's what people remember about you. You're doing the work of your critics for them. And over time, this creates a reputation as someone who lacks confidence, someone who can't handle success, someone who's so uncomfortable with their own value that they have to immediately diminish any recognition they receive. Think about the people you genuinely admire. When someone compliments their work, do they launch into a detailed explanation of everything they did wrong? No. They say thank you. They accept the recognition gracefully. They might acknowledge others who contributed, but they don't tear themselves down in the process. That's because confident people understand that accepting a compliment isn't arrogance. It's simply acknowledging reality. Someone observes something positive about you or your work, and you confirm that observation. That's it. There's nothing conceited about that. Breaking the self-roast ritual requires you to get comfortable with simply saying, thank you, and stopping there. When someone compliments you, take a breath, say thank you, and let there be a moment of silence. Resist the overwhelming urge to fill that silence with self-deprecation. If you want to say more, you can say something like, "Thank you, I worked really hard on that," or "Thank you, I appreciate you noticing." But you don't need to list everything you think you did wrong. You don't need to convince the other person that they're mistaken for thinking well of you. Now, I want you to take a moment and think about how many of these 7 habits you recognized in yourself. If you're being honest, probably most of them, maybe all of them. And here's what you need to understand. These habits didn't develop because you're weak or broken or defective. They develop because you've been socialized to believe that making yourself smaller makes other people more comfortable. You've been taught that politeness means constantly deferring, constantly apologizing, constantly minimizing your own needs and value. But the people who succeed, the people who are respected, the people who are taken seriously, have figured out something crucial. Real respect doesn't come from making yourself smaller. It comes from taking up the space you deserve, from communicating with clarity and confidence, from setting boundaries and honoring them, from accepting recognition without immediately tearing yourself down. These aren't rude behaviors. These aren't arrogant behaviors. These are the behaviors of people who understand their own value and expect others to recognize it too. Here's what I want you to do starting right now. Pick one of these 7 habits, just one. Maybe it's the apology reflex. Maybe it's the just virus. Maybe it's the yes addiction. Whichever one resonated with you the most, that's the one you're going to focus on for the next week. Every single day, you're going to catch yourself in that habit and consciously choose a different response. You're not going to try to fix all 7 at once, because that's overwhelming, and you'll end up changing nothing. You're going to target one habit, master it, and then move to the next. And here's what's going to happen. As you start breaking these habits, you're going to notice something incredible. People's responses to you will start to change. You'll notice that when you stop apologizing for existing, people start taking your contributions more seriously. When you stop smiling and nodding at things you disagree with, people start asking for your actual opinion. When you stop over-explaining your decisions, people stop interrogating your boundaries. When you remove just from your communication, your emails and messages suddenly carry more weight. When you start saying no to things that don't serve you, the yeses you do give become more valuable. When you accept compliments gracefully, people start seeing you as someone who's comfortable with success. This transformation won't happen overnight, and it won't always be comfortable. You've spent years, maybe decades, performing these habits. You've built an entire social identity around being the person who apologizes, who agrees, who over-explains, who says yes to everything, who tears themselves down. Changing that identity will create friction. Some people in your life have benefited from these habits. They've benefited from you being easy to manipulate, easy to override, easy to dismiss. Those people might push back when you start setting boundaries and communicating with confidence. Let them. Their discomfort with your growth is not your responsibility to manage. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 habits hit you the hardest? Which one do you recognize as your biggest reputation destroyer? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if this video gave you insights that you know someone else in your life desperately needs to hear, do them a favor and share it with them. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is show them the patterns they can't see in themselves. That's what we do here at Shadow Whisper. We reveal the invisible dynamics that shape how people perceive you and how you perceive yourself. The truth is, your reputation isn't built on grand gestures or dramatic moments. It's built on these small, daily habits that either position you as someone to be respected or someone to be overlooked. Every interaction is either reinforcing a reputation of confidence and competence, or it's reinforcing a reputation of uncertainty and insecurity. There's no neutral. Every email you send, every conversation you have, every boundary you set or fail to set is contributing to the story people tell themselves about who you are and what you're worth. You have more control over that story than you think. You're not a victim of other people's perceptions. You're an active participant in creating those perceptions through the choices you make in how you communicate, how you present yourself, and how you allow others to treat you. These 7 habits, the apology reflex, the submission smile, the JADE trap, the does that make sense killer, the yes addiction, the just virus, and the self-roast ritual. They're all choices. They feel automatic because you've practiced them so many times they've become default settings. But defaults can be changed. Starting today, you have the opportunity to rewrite your reputation, not by becoming someone you're not, but by removing the habits that have been hiding who you actually are. Underneath all these apologetic, over-explaining, self-deprecating patterns is a person who deserves to take up space, who has valuable contributions to make, who can set boundaries and have them respected, who can accept recognition without immediately tearing themselves down. That person has always been there. These habits have just been covering them up. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 30 days, commit to breaking one of these habits. Track your progress. Notice how people respond differently to you. Notice how you feel about yourself when you stop performing these behaviors. And then come back and watch this video again, because I guarantee you'll hear it differently once you've started experiencing the changes firsthand. The insights that seemed theoretical right now will become lived reality. And at that point, you'll be ready to tackle the next habit and the next one until all 7 of these reputation destroyers have been eliminated from your daily patterns. Your reputation is the most valuable professional and social asset you have. It determines what opportunities come your way, how seriously people take you, whether your ideas get implemented or ignored, whether you get promoted or passed over. And right now, these 7 habits are quietly, invisibly destroying that asset every single day. But now you see them. You can't unsee them. And that awareness is the first and most critical step toward change. Use it. Take action. Transform how the world sees you by transforming these small but powerful daily habits. This is how respect is built. This is how reputations are changed. This is how you step into the version of yourself that you've always known was possible, but could never quite access. The path is clear. The choice is yours. Let's make it happen.